Well guys, today we're going to go through the free 454. Now the deal with this thing is, I got this for free from Bob, the same guy I got the Galaxie from. I swapped in and did some work on a small block for him, and he gave me the big block and the 6-speed as payment. So all I know about this big block is it wasn't original to that truck. It come out of an 84 half ton. And it does run, but it's got a bottom end knock. So today we're going to take her apart. We're going to see what she really is. We'll run some casting numbers on it for the heads and for the block, and we'll see if we can figure out what it come out of and what it really is. So anyway, let's get started. I just have a distributor stabbed in here just to keep things clean, same with the air cleaner. Get the headers pulled off. Just hanging the headers and stuff on the wall, up out of the way, and then I'm not tripping on them. The engine's pretty well still assembled. For the most part, we only stole a few things that we needed when we swapped it over, like the thermostat housing and whatnot. The quadrijet. To pop the water pump, I'm sure there's probably a little bit of water in it still. And just so everyone knows, I've never owned a big block before. Well, big block Chevy. So, I've never tore one apart either. So hopefully, I can learn as we go. I'm sure there's still some water in here. There we go. A little bit, not too bad. Need a knife. There we go. Water pump. Put that away before I hurt myself. Thermostat. Let's do intake. Alright, it's most of the bolts. Let's get angry at a couple of them. Now, you're never supposed to remove pipe plugs or fittings with an impact or install them. But I have no intention of ever using this intake again. Got one bolt here that just doesn't want to come. So we'll use Big Bertha. Now, let's get a pry bar. Well, got the pry bars. I grabbed my bathroom scale. We're going to see if we can't weigh some of this heavy cast iron stuff. Alright, so where do I want to go here? This thing's only been on here for probably 40 years, so probably not exactly in a hurry to come off. Make sure. Get a little angry with it. There we go. Whew. Sealed on there well. Alright. Turn the scale on. Put it at 0. Put that on there. There you have it. 49.3 pounds just in the intake manifold. Alright. And actually, it's not too bad. There's a little bit of junk. Probably a lot of it came from these EGR ports when I pulled the intake off, but it's actually fairly clean in here. Like, it doesn't look like they missed a lot of oil changes, which sure is good news. Let's take off the valve covers. I find it funny that it only took 4 bolts to hold on a small block valve cover, but it takes 7 on the big block. See what we got. It's actually, other than the fact someone siliconed it on instead of using a proper gasket, looks pretty good in here too. Having never done a big block, I find it a little cool how they have the porcupine style valves on them. Nice canted valves. But I mean, it's, for the most part, it's fairly clean in here. A little bit of silicone. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with what I see. Here's our casting number. We'll look that up in a minute. Pop the other one. More of the same. Just because I don't know the history of this engine, I am going to make sure that they are the same casting on both. 336781. Yeah, same casting on both heads, so. And if I'm looking at this right, I think they're from 78, but I don't know what I'm looking at quite with that number there. But we'll run some numbers and see what we find out. Temperature sender, broken one off the small block, stole it off the big block to fit. Alright, I'm just going to start pulling rockers. Alright, let's pull some heads. Got all the bolts out of the heads. And I have a feeling that these have been apart before because I've never seen a sealant like that used on a factory bolt. And I mean, as old as this engine probably is, I wouldn't doubt it's been out of stuff. It's been apart before. So let's pop some heads and see what we find. This could be fun. Surprising, not a whole bunch of coolant. Head gasket looks good on this side. Genuine GM number on it. See if you can see that. This one's the same. Looks pretty good. Alright guys, let's get weight on this factory head here. Zero out the scale. Oof. 74.4 pounds. Look at that, eh? Not exactly light. So we have a look in the cylinders. Feel a little bit of ridge. They don't look too bad. I don't see any big scars, any damage to the pistons. On this side anyway. Now we'll look at the passenger side. And it's about the same. Shoot, I can even still see a little bit of cross hatching in that one. A little bit of ridge on the top, but like barely noticeable. Like that's a million times better than I was expecting. I was expecting this thing to be wore right out. We'll have a look at the head here. And we can see, man, I've been a small block guy all my life. I've never had a big block. These valves are massive. I cannot believe the size of these freaking things. No wonder these things make huge power. But you can see no damage where the head gasket was, so there's definitely no head gasket leaking. Valves, none of them look burnt. None of them look way sunk in the heads. So I'm going to say it's pretty nice, although it does look like she had quite a bit of carbon in there. Maybe she was burning oil or something. But let's pull the lifters out, pull the front end apart, and pull the timing cover and get that cam out. The lifters look pretty nice too. Nothing looks real wore, scarred, nothing sticky in the bore. I've taken lots of engines apart on old junk where the lifters, you got trouble taking them out. But I'm not worried about keeping things organized because I won't be using the same lifters or cam. So maybe if I can get these out. But these things are coming out beautifully. Like, I'm not grabbing them by much, and they're pulling out no problem at all. Like, I had a feeling I was going to take this thing apart and it was just going to be a disgusting mess. And like a ton of machine work to do and probably not even be worth doing anything with. But by looking at it, there's a good chance a little dingle ball hone, some rings and bearings, and she'll be good to go. I am interested to see what the bottom end looks like because it was a little rough when we had it running. Like, it didn't sound the nicest, so like I just pried that out with a crappy knife to get it high enough to grab with the pliers. No problem at all. Alright, we'll get the balancer and the pulley off and then we'll get in it. Nine sixteenths. So we'll get that just started back on. We got our snap-on bolt grip puller set. And as you can see, I think I've used it maybe twice. So we'll see if she's got enough jam to pull this old girl apart. This has a lip on it on one side and not the other. So we're going to flip this around so that the lip is on the outside. Hopefully it gets close enough to get these bolts started by more than one thread. There are longer bolts in here if I need to use them. Really hoping that these would do the job. Now, you're not supposed to use an impact on these, but I don't have a big ratchet here, so we'll do what we're not supposed to and try to be careful about it. So what I did there is I rinsed until it just about bottomed out on the bolt. And now, what I'm going to do, just pop this out of the way, and we'll get that bolt out. With the washer. And I have the big button on the end of my puller here. So it should push on the end of that crank snout without too many issues here. We're going to take these bolts in the ways. Perfect. Pretty good. So there's actually nothing fancy about this puller. I mean, it is a snap-on, but I mean, it's not like it's super high quality steel. It's just, I have another one that's just a cheap, generic Chinese one that I've had for years and years, and it's never given me any problems. So, I mean, it's not like you have to have some big expensive toy. I actually had a gift card on the Snap-on truck, and didn't have my puller with me that day, so I ended up going and buying one. And it is nice because it does have all the room in the case for all the bolts, and it comes with metric and standard bolts in it. So, but anyway, let's pull this timing cover off. Now, I've never had a big block, so I don't know if I can even sneak this out of here. But we'll give her a try. I know on a small block it's a bit of a bear to try and get it out. Get the timing cover out without pulling the pan. But I'll be. That wasn't too bad at all. That was not bad at all. Like, it's even clean inside the timing cover. Cannot believe that. This will probably be the telltale right here. It's still got the nylon GM timing chain. Timing gear. I cannot believe that. I've never seen one that came off in one piece with these nylon gears. Usually you're changing them because there's nothing left of them. It's actually not even that much wear to it. It's crazy. Like, the chain is in nice shape. I guess I didn't really check much for slack here, but that's easy enough to do quick. There's quite a bit of slack to it. So it may be an original chain and tensioner, or not tensioner, chain and gears. So, crazy. Look at that. Basically a camera removal tool. I don't see any lobes completely wiped out on the cam. Don't see any numbers on the cam either. I mean, it may be a replacement unit. I mean, look at the wear areas on it. It doesn't even look like, this cam doesn't even look like it's seen much use. This engine just continues to surprise me. Cannot believe that. Might have to dig into that a little more later. For anyone who doesn't know, whenever you store a cam or a crankshaft outside of an engine, always stand them up. Maybe it's an old wives' tale, I just don't like risking it. They say it can make the cam or the crank warp a little, so. Now, I guess we're going to find out if there's any oil in this thing. Alright, let's pull the pan. Grab a couple sockets because I'm not sure on a big block what size we want. I want a small block. They like to use 2 different sizes, so let's see what we got here. Looks like they're all 5/16 bolts. Well, at least so far anyway. Put a ding in the pan here. There we go. Just enough. I'm going to leave this one here for now until I get the other side undone. When I left. Pretty much dry. I was pretty sure we drained it, but just wanted to make sure. Well, as you can tell by the giant leak on the floor, there was still coolant in it, unfortunately. Like this whole bottom end, it's not full of sludge. Really surprised with this engine. Wow. Sure build these things heavy. So, pop a couple of pistons and see what we see. You can see definitely a set of bearings will do it some good. The top half of the bearings both the same. Cylinder 6. I have a feeling someone's been in it before, because it's already been stamped with the cylinder number, as has the cap. But I wonder if someone didn't quite have the tolerances, or if it just has that many miles, or if it wasn't properly torqued. I don't know. I will say that the wrist pin is a little tight. Nothing crazy, but it's tighter than I would like. Pull a couple more out. Okay guys, I've got everything out except for cylinders 1 and 2. And I was just rolling it over and I noticed this. I think I found our bad one. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a lot of shake to cylinder number 1 here. I also see hammer marks on the bottom. So whoever was putting this together last time was obviously using a steel hammer, and that's, if you can see what I've been doing, I was using the rubber end on my fiberglass mallet over there, and then I've been using my wooden hammer, because you just don't want to strike steel on steel because it's too hard, or it's too easy to just damage something. So we'll get these last two out. Well, I was partially right, because here's cylinder 1, and as you can see, I'll just clean this bearing a little. It was definitely just starting to spin. You can see the tang is gone off the end here, well, basically non-existent. And then the cap is the same. You can see that the deep grooves in it and the damage. So, but number 2, that's the bearing on number 2. To the uneducated eye, it looks a little wore. I'm going to show you this. It's also pounded out. You can see how it's wider than the bearing surface. And you can see the hot spots on the back of it. That bearing was spinning. Look at the inside of the rod. I mean, this rod is... The rod would have to be ground to be reusable. And I just don't think that that's even worth wasting my time with. But number 1 and number 2, both NFG. So let's pull the crank out and I'll show you the damage to the journals of the crank. Let's pull the crank. Everything about these things is just one noticeable amount larger. Now it's normally a good idea to number these caps, but they've all been stamped already by the previous person to disassemble this bottom end. Here's the other half of that number 2 cylinder bearing. She's hooped. Definitely some scoring in the main, at least in number 1 here. Like I said, it's already been stenciled. I don't like hitting with a steel hammer, but you can if you're careful. Ooh. This main bearing's pretty hooptied too. If you have a look at that, see the metal flaking, the deep grooves. And you can see the bearing doesn't even sit tightly in that main anymore. So I'm willing to bet, see that one's pretty nice, number 3 is pretty good. I'm willing to bet that she's going to be a crank rods and pistons for this old girl. Only thing that I should have checked before I pulled it was how far down the pistons were in the hole, but I don't have anything here to measure it with anyway. This one's got a few deep grooves in it, probably from the metal. Most of these deep grooves are probably from the metal going through after these bearings started spinning. Rear main seal was in really nice shape still. And actually the whole back of the block was fairly clean. See this number 5 bearing is the thrust bearing as well, and you can see like the thrust is still in really nice shape. Not that it matters because it's all going to get changed anyway, but still. So let's crank. Like I said earlier, you always want to stand up the crank. So we'll have a look at the block side of the mains. There's number 1, not too bad. Number 2 is rough. See that whole chunk and evidence on this side of another chunk. It's pretty much completely hooped. Number 3 is actually pretty good. Number 4 is in pretty nice shape. Number 5, you can see it's showing quite a bit of color here. It was definitely time for bearings. Alright, so we'll have a look inside these cylinders here. See, there is some grooving. This is number 2. There is some grooving in here. I mean, you can see where the piston sat for a long time. There's just some coloring in there. Maybe now we can see it. But I mean, like, there's not much of a ridge here. There's a little bit. But I had no problem taking pistons out. You can actually see some of the crosshatch still right here. Not a lot. But I do have a bore gauge at work that I'll snag and I'll bring out here before we order parts, and we'll have a look and see if we can't figure out how bad the bore is. Yeah, it all actually looks pretty good. Depending on what I was doing with it, I wouldn't be afraid to reuse it with a slight hone, some new bearings, and a crank. But like the cam bearings are in good shape. I mean, I'll probably change them. There's some nicks here where the lobes got drug across, whether it was me or the previous person. That makes no difference. Damage is damage. It doesn't matter who did it. But yeah, let's see if we can get a good look at this crank. Alright guys, so did some research on these casting numbers. Its cast number on the head is 336781. So I looked it up, and as you can see here, Chevy cylinder head, big block V8, 73 to 85, oval port, open chamber, 454, 118cc chambers, 256, 114cc ports. Now, is that good? I don't know. I'll have to do some research, but hey, it's a big block head. Could be worse. So, Then there's the casting number on the block, which is a 361959. So I did the same with it. I looked that up. Big block engine, 73 to 90, 454, 2 or 4 bolt, sometimes mistaken as 861959. Not a whole lot of info. We know it's a 2 bolt main, 454, 73 to 90. So we'll have to do some research. There's also another tag on the front of the block here on a small block. I got to do some research and see if the big block's the same. I'll have to clean this up. But I have a feeling that this block is a 78 just by this code here, which I believe is a date code, D1878. So if I had to guess, I'd say the block was built in 1978, and the casting on the heads is the same, D1878. So it's probably the heads that were factory on this engine, and it's all probably out of a 78, probably a pickup truck. Just my guess. I'm going to see if I can clean up those numbers on the front, and we'll see what it come out of. Okay guys, so we found a couple numbers on this block. First one's right here. It's T0426TRH. And then over here we have a C833188183, which I believe is part of the VIN of the vehicle it come out of. This one should, if I'm reading this right, be engine is from the Tonawanda engine plant. 04 is the month, so April. 26, so the 26th day of April. And TRH is a 1978 454 250 horse engine. That's what I've been able to find. I may be wrong, I may be right. But from the little bit of research I've done, that's what I found. So if anyone knows more than me, please tell me. I'm always willing to learn. You're not going to offend me. Let's have a look at this crank. So we can see number 5 main journal. A little bit of scoring. I think it could easily be polished out. It's the same story on rods 7 and 8 here, the journal. Number 4 main is actually really nice, as is the journal for 5 and 6 here. Number 3 main, same story here. There's a little bit of marking to it, but I mean, you can barely even feel it with your nail. I think that could be polished. 3 and 4 here looks really nice. And here we have the problem area. You can see how deeply scored this is. It's almost like dragging your finger across a vinyl record. So I mean, it'd have to be undercut and machined down, but it's fixable. But then we get to numbers 1 and 2 here. And I don't know how well you guys can see this, but there is a definite lip. Number 1 is scored and in rough shape, but number 2 is just chewed away. Like there's a definite ledge between the two. So I have a feeling that this crank probably isn't worth doing anything with. At the price of a drop-in or a reground crank, I don't see it being worth it. Like there's no intrinsic value to this crank. This engine isn't special to me in any way. It's not like it was my father's and his father's and his father's. There's no special value to this for me. But I do have a machine shop about an hour away. I know my boss was redoing a small block for his son, and they had cranks in stock for 120 bucks a pop, reground. And they weren't even taking cores anymore because they just have so many of them. So I think the plan is I'm going to start shopping around, see if I can find a crank. I'll shop the used market if I can find a good forged crank. I don't plan on making any big power with this. I don't know where to put it. If I had a car planned out for it and picked out for it, I would consider doing a decent build on it, but we might just do a cheap build for now, reuse our stock heads. I'll have them cleaned up and I'll check them out. I have a feeling that the valves are redone. I'll pop a few valves, check them out. I'm going to change the springs anyway, because regardless, I'll be putting a different cam in, and I just want to have good springs that I know, and it's just not worth risking for me. But we'll see. I might even look at like a 396 427 crank. I have to check journal size. I don't know a lot about big blocks, because 427 is the same bore as this, and I believe it's the same stroke as the 396. And 454s are cool, but 427 is just such a nostalgic number. It's like a 350 versus a 327. Nobody in their right mind would think a 327 makes more power when all things are equal. There's just something about a 327 when you can walk up and say, yeah, it's got a 327. Sounds a lot more impressive than, oh yeah, it's a 350, right? Maybe it's all in my mind. But anyway, thanks for coming along. Thanks for having a look at this old girl. I'm going to start shopping around, start pricing things out. And I might start scavenging parts. And we'll see if we can't get some stuff. I'm going to go through and I'm going to check the bore on the block, make sure the taper's okay, check that ridge. I'll try to film it. But anyway, thanks for coming along. Like, subscribe, feel free to comment. I'll do my best to answer everything, guys. But yeah, we'll see you next time.